Hey guys, what's up? So this is the guide. Let's call it a follow-up guide to my original kind of aiming and accuracy guide. I'll just put that as a follow-up because what I'm going to say in this video goes well hand in hand with the first video regarding accuracy and all that. But yeah, so pretty much you read the title right. I mean, this is pretty much how you can play like the cheaters without actually using the cheats that they use to help them, because what they do is essentially do what I'm going to show you now, but they use a device that does that for them. So they don't take any skill, the device does everything for them. Instead, I'm going to show you how to do that, but with skill instead of cheating. So, just like I said about regarding accuracy and all, you really want to set your controls right. Now, I was like messing around and tweaking for an hour yesterday, a full hour, and I came up with this settings here for me. They work good. I mean, you can try it out if you want, see how it goes for you, but because I was mainly before this using sensitivities 3 and 4 here. I started at 3, which is pretty good, but I noticed at 3 is on multiplayer when you're close to the guy, it's like really hard to follow him up. If he's traced like left and right just a little bit is enough to throw your aim, and you cannot, especially if he's running, it's even worse. You cannot follow him because the sensitivity is so slow. So I bumped it up to 4 and it got better, but it wasn't perfect yet. I mean, it definitely better, but you know, not exactly. There were still some flaws, not exactly all that I wanted out of it. And then I found this, which works well with the 5. And now, I mean, it's fast enough to shoot up close. You know, from far, it's all good. It's the perfect balance, which is, you know, between 0 and 10. So it's gonna be the best overall option for all the ranges of engagements. Now, okay, so let me I covered this on the first guide on accuracy, so watch that as well. Just like I said, this is kind of a follow-up, but I'll just briefly explain everything again, just kind of a recap. So the first settings, which is the sensitivity, is how fast you're moving your aim, like this, like I'm doing right now. So if it's like really high, it's gonna go all over the place with the smallest touch on your analog. And if it's really slow, no matter if you're like really almost ripping off the analog, it's still gonna go very slow because it's very slow there. So that's what that does. Now the acceleration, you see I have it at 0. So at 0 your aiming is always constant, so this is the max speed I can reach, and it's never going to change it. Now if I put acceleration on, it would pretty much, after like a second or so, you see it gets faster. After like 1 second of constant dragging, the aiming it bumps to its speed, accelerates. That's what that setting is doing. So you see it gets faster. And it's like, so essentially this is like better for sniping, really. That's why I have it on 0, because this can kind of throw you off, because you're trying to your eyes are seeing the reticle move in a certain speed, and then all of a sudden it just kicks to a faster speed, which throws you off. That's why I don't like to use that. I mean, of course you can get used to this, but I don't know, I just rather not have it, because it throws you off. Like, it makes you overreach the target. So like, let's just say I'm aiming there, I start to drag here, and by the time I get there, it starts to accelerate, and then I overreach. So it's kind of hard to control that. But if I have it at a constant speed, which would be 0, then I can know for sure that it's always going to be the actual speed that I'm looking at on my screen, you know, so that I don't overreach and I can stop close to where I want. Now ramp power scale, pretty much what it does is, to put it in a simple manner, I actually figure out what it does. It's when it really affects when you do really like sensitive small movements with the analog. For example, right now you see I'm moving like very slow because I'm barely touching the analog stick, and as I push the analog more and more, you see it gets faster. So this is where ramp up power scale makes a difference. It pretty much means it kind of erases this little movements here. It makes it so you have to move the analog further to actually get a response from the analog. You can feel this if you put it like too high, like on 10 or something. You will notice that it feels kind of laggy to respond to your movements. Like it only really responds once the analog touches the extremes. You will notice that. If you try to do a small movement, you notice that it barely moves or it doesn't move at all. It feels like you're giving the command that it's not responding. It feels laggy. That's why I don't really recommend that you have it really high. But at the same time, I used to use at 0, but I figured out that's not that good of an idea, because at 0, like the slightest movement you can imagine on the analog is gonna have an effect on your aim, and that can be pretty bad. Sometimes you're just trying to get that right touch, but because everything is so sensitive, you can like easily overreach your target, because every small movement will count. So it makes you have to be like even more precise with how your finger movement. That's what I mean. It makes you at 0 you have to be like 100% precise, but the higher you have, the less precise you have to be, because at that point only extravagant movements will really count if you have it really high, and the small ones pretty much will do nothing and will feel laggy if you do them, which I don't like it, because you want to have a fast response, and if you have to wait until your fingers pull the analog all the way to get a response, that's wasting time, and during a gunfight that can make the difference. And it also kind of throws off your brain, because it makes you think like you're giving the command but nothing is happening. So I don't like to have it at 0, but I like to have it as small as I can, just enough so that I feel that it's there, but not to the point where it's actually getting in my way. So I figured out that 1 works better for that reason. There's I can feel like a tiny little nothing of lag, but at the same time it's not that extremely sensitive where everything that I touch on the analog will get me a movement out of it. So yeah, that's pretty much what ramp up power scale does. The higher you have, the more you have to move the analog to actually get an effect, and the lower you have, the slightest movement will give you an effect on the aiming. Now, so yeah, this might be good. Yeah, I don't really. It's really on the acceleration that makes a difference for sniping, because on sniping you're actually following the target quite often. You're following targets, and if your sensitivity is too slow to catch up, if it's constant like my is now, you cannot like follow up the target when it's really far away. I mean when it's close, then that is. When it's very close and you kind of can't shoot them, that's bad. So with the acceleration it helps there, because with the sniper you can start slow, but then it's going to catch up because of the acceleration, so it's going to catch up to the target. So I would say the acceleration is more to be concerned if you're using a sniper rather than a normal weapon. Now ramp power scale, and this is camera sensitivity, is the camera itself, the third person camera like I'm moving right now. And I find it, I used to use at 10, but I found that up to a 7 or higher is the ideal. You don't want to use it too low, because you want to be able to like turn around if people are behind you and whatnot. Also it helps, interferes directly with how you blind fire, because you follow the target with your camera. And also, so having too slow might be a problem, because the target might be faster than your camera. And also the pre-aiming, which is aiming with your screen, the little dot that you see in the middle of the screen. So I want to shoot the head, I'll pre-aim there, and then I'll just aim and fire, and the shot will immediately go where my pre-aim is, or at least I can get close to it, and then I just adjust with the aim quickly then. So yeah, if you have it too fast as well, it might make it so the pre-aiming is hard to do. It's hard to be accurate with it. You might overreach because it's too, like, let's just say I'm trying to aim at that statue. You know, my pre-aim kind of, you know, see, like it's doing, like it's overreaching. This might happen if you have it too fast. But again, it's part of something you can get used to it. If you develop the muscle memory after lots of practice and actual usage of it. But yeah, that's why I don't have like a 10 or too high. 8 is probably fine. I tried some practice with 7, but I don't know, it felt kind of slow to me, so I bump it up to 8, and then I bump it up to 9, and I feel 9 is fine. I don't need the 10, because 10 I noticed I used to overreach a lot when I was trying to aim. But as a general rule of thumb for like really any game, you gotta, it's like a balance, because the faster the reticle, the harder it is to be accurate, but at the same time you're faster, so you're kind of trading an advantage for a disadvantage there. There's always an advantage and a certain amount on advantage and disadvantage to no matter what number you choose there for the settings. So you can give up accuracy for speed, or you can give up speed for accuracy, and it all matters depending on the range that you're actually. If I'm trying to hit a target from this range, the speed matters more than the accuracy, but if I'm trying to hit a target like all the way there, then the accuracy matters more than the speed. So that's why, I mean, I don't think anything more than a 5 is a good option, because 5 is the perfect balance between 0 and 10, is the middle point. So you have the fastest you can get while still being as accurate as you can be at the same time, which is actually the default is 5. But yeah, so that's about the camera. And like I said, I was about 1 hour just sitting around practicing this, hitting targets, and I suggest you do the same to find what works best for you. Maybe it might even be a 3 for you, or 4, I don't know. It depends on, you know, depends on you, so you have to test. What I recommend, this is a good map actually. You can just, you know, practice your targets, like with the scope, without a scope, but just kind of do somewhat of a circuit run where you try to hit the targets. You know, kind of this mask you kind of going between one another. See if you're overreaching or not when you do this, when you go from one target to the other. See, if I did this, I just overreached. See, overreached. You want to be accurate while still being fast. You can practice close range as well. And yeah, so that's for the camera settings, and make sure you practice also and after this, of course, start with a private match, maybe hitting just, because the aim assist is going to play a role as well. It's going to make it easier, even though it might seem hard to do on stationary targets like this, on non-animated targets. Once you get in an actual match, if you have the aim assist here really high, you notice that it will help you a lot with that overreaching. So just know that it's different than when you're aiming at an actual target, when you're aiming at a non-animated target. So but of course, if you can aim like perfectly on a non-animated target, I can guarantee you're gonna aim even better on an animated target. So that's why I say you should start practicing here. So if you're missing here just by a little bit, it means that you're probably ready to try that settings on an actual match and see how it goes. So like, also make sure you want to get a sensitivity that not only you can hit the target, but you can pretty much get headshots at will. You know, you want a sensitivity that allows you to, whenever you want, to actually get the headshots, because that's really the most important thing, because you know, getting the headshots matter more than actually hitting the target. which is essentially the same. You're hitting the target by hitting the head, but you get the point. And yeah, so and I'll go through now the other options, which is something kind of new, no one really talks about, which are these ones, the actual controls here, and how they actually influence your game. Now this is what I found to work. I mean, I think it works best in terms of being competitive. And I mean, after I figure all these settings, I mean, I swear to you, I just got in a mess, because I still have to practice myself. I'm not completely used to this yet, but I went immediately to like a plunder match just to practice, see how it was going after I practiced on private, and I was getting like 30 kills playing badly. I'm not even kidding you. I mean, and that's 30 kills for not even a full length match. So it works pretty well. And the main reason why I said this helps you play like the cheaters is mostly because of the because the cheaters, they use something called anti-recoil, and also they use something like control freaks, which is not really a cheat, but it is an advantage in a way, which is the little extension of the analog stick that you can buy, which makes if you have that, it makes the small adjustments, like for example, let me find a target. You see, like for example, my aim is there. Moving from this to the head is a very small adjustment I have to make on my analog stick. If you have the control freak instead of the standard analog, it's like, I don't know, twice as easy to, probably 3-4 times as easy to make this small adjustment. And if you have a standard controller, it's way easier to overreach with the standard controller on this really detailed small adjustments. So that's where the advantage lies on using those control freaks things, the analog extension. Now the other cheat they use is something called Chronos Max, or there's another product called Titan 2 or 1, which essentially is kind of a program that pretty much mods the controller to work however you want it to control. So in essence, you can use this to program your controller to give inputs that you are not actually pressing with your hands. So you can have something like auto marking, which is essentially the program makes the game thinks that you're pressing the marking button at all times. So just by going over the target is gonna auto mark it without you having to actually press the button, because the game is understanding, because of the program, that you're already pressing that like infinitely. And that's pretty much how it works. They do the same for fire rates, which are semi-automatic weapons like this. You have to press to fire each bullet. They make it so, the program makes it so there's like an infinite, not just infinite, but very extremely fast, like milliseconds pressings, which is something that's not humanly possible to do with your fingers. It just makes it automatic, like it's like it was a person constantly pressing the button, like infinitely. And so it makes it so the weapon fires as fast as it possibly can, which can be achieved humanly, but it's, you know, as you can imagine, very, very hard and probably not consistent. So that's what the cheaters use. They use that to make it consistent and effortless, because they're not the actual reason of that fire rate. And for them, they don't have to press it for each shot. They just hold it, and the inputs keep coming, so it keeps firing as fast as possible just by holding. So they can essentially use a semi-automatic weapon as an automatic weapon, which is extremely overpowered. And that's usually why you see them firing like 5 times faster than, I mean, that's an exaggeration, but at least like 2 times faster than you are shooting them. And those guys are cheaters. Now let's get to the point, which is the how you can do the same without actually having those cheats, those programs and all that. which is by using these settings. Now this is just personal preference. I think it works better competitive, but just go around in a private match and test this out, see what you like best. You see there are up to 4 alternatives, 5. I like to use the 3, which is L1 to aim instead of L2. L2 becomes the grenade. R2 becomes the rope, and R1 becomes the firing of the weapon. So essentially, you're switching the L2 for L1 and the R1 for R2. Essentially, not exactly, but essentially. Now it's a lot easier to fire faster with the R1 than it is to fire with the R2. That's why I made the change. So you see, like, watch how fast I'm going to fire. You see, like, the animation of the gun barely ends before the second shot going out, because it's shooting so fast. And that's pretty much the speed the cheaters are firing, which is the fastest possible. Now if you try doing this with the R2, you see you can still do it, but it's a lot harder and less consistent. I mean, and with the R1 you can, like, depending on how you hold the controller, you can really try it. I mean, you see that's a pretty fast fire rate. I just emptied the entire clip in like 1 second, 2 seconds. So with this you become a lot more competitive, and you can actually, you know, compete with those cheaters. Even though they're using the cheats, you can always do the same thing. So yeah, that's the first thing about this. I like to make that switch. Oh, I'm sorry, which is actually the switch. It's not the first one. The alternative is L1 for the aiming. And also you see it makes my shoulder swap on the left analog, which I personally, that's more a personal preference. I just feel more natural switching with the button that actually moves my character. If you try it out, instead of having to take my thumb away from the right analog, move it to the X button and press it, this switch, which is the default. Having it on the analog, on the same analog that I use to move my character, just feels a lot more natural. And the same thing goes for the zooming. I like to have it on the analog because it's the same button I'm using to aim, so it all flows very well together instead of separately. And the marking goes to X button, which you can do this by using what is called the claw grip. I'll actually write on the screen the claw grip. If you know what that is, just search on Google like claw grip controller or something like that, and you get some images and you can have an idea. It pretty much means it's just a different way to hold the right side of the controller, which allows you to press more buttons at the same, in a faster way. Which is your thumb is going to be on an analog, your index finger is going to be on the X button, and you'll still be able to have the other fingers on the other buttons. Just that is the claw grip. Just, you know, Google the name and you find pictures. That's some better demonstration. So that's how you can mark, fast, using this control scheme. Now aim assist, again, I recommend you always have it high, because it helps you more than it bothers you, more than it, you know, gets in the way. It actually helps the aim assist. And now for the legacy, you see here the scheme, there's default and there's legacy, which changes the firing, like I just explained, to make it, which I think it's faster. This is the sighted, which I think is more for the left-handed people. Also, the alternative here also has an option. If you is it 2 or 1, I don't remember, but it has an option for the left-handed people. So if you're left-handed, the sighted is probably gonna work better for you. And there's a legacy, which is for right-handed people, which which is just like I explained. The grenade goes to here, the L2, L1 aims, R1 fires, and the R2 is the whip. So yeah, if you just change this, it's gonna take a while to get used to it. But once you do, I mean, it feels just a lot more natural to play this way. Like, you don't have to keep like taking your hands off, your fingers off one button to the other to make the commands. It's all just flows very naturally together. So yeah, and now for so yeah, that's pretty much how you. The main tip is really the switching to the legacy, which allows you to fire with the R1, which you notice you'll be able to fire, especially if you have a good trigger finger, you'll be able to fire like immensely faster. Now the other thing about the cheaters, which is the anti-recoil, you can actually mimic that with skill by learning the weapon patterns. For example, watch how the recoil is going to go on the weapon now. I'm shooting as fast as I can. And you see it goes really high all over the place there. You can counter this by using the right analog stick, which is the one you aim with. If you like, you see I'm holding down the analog. This is what I want you want to do, but while actually shooting. And the same thing goes if a weapon has a recoil to the left, you can hold the analog to the right to counter it, which is gonna end up having it at the center while you're still shooting. It essentially annihilates the recoil. And if you know, if a gun has simple pattern like the Metler, which is just pretty much straight up, there's a little bit to the side there, but it's almost, you know, it's not really a lot. So watch how I'm gonna do this now. And I'm firing as fast as I can. Look at the difference. This was without the adjustment. This was with the analog adjustment. So a huge difference there. But you have to like try this out and actually practice, because it's not as simple as just holding it down while you're shooting. What I'm doing for this weapon specifically, I'll just give you a quick tip. I'm actually pushing the analog down for not constantly, but within every shot. So I fire, I push down, I fire, I push down. This is essentially what I'm doing for every shot. So I'm very conscious about it. So essentially, as I see every shot goes away, I'm pushing quickly down to counter the recoil that I just gained. So if I'm just shooting, it's gonna keep going up with the recoil. So essentially it goes up and I adjust, it goes up, I adjust, it goes up, I adjust as I'm shooting, which makes it like this, which is insanely accurate. Now the same thing goes for a weapon like the Cooper head, which has a very simple recoil pattern. These ones that go straight up are the easy ones. The hard ones are weapons like the HS, which have a like just weird, awkward recoil. You see, I'm adjusting with the analog. Let me not adjust. You see, this is not adjusting. Look at the difference. And this works on. Oh, and keep in mind the amount of adjustment you have to make. It varies. So the same adjustment I did there does not work for this range, because if I do the same adjustment, it's not going to be enough, because the range is higher, I mean it's longer, the effect of the recoil on my target is going to be also higher because of the distance. So you have to kind of, you know, you understand what I mean, you have to balance it out for each range, and that's where the challenge really is. So you see, even from this range, it was not as accurate because of the range is further, but it was still like pretty accurate. And if you practice this, I mean, you can pretty much hit all your shots no matter how fast you're firing. And this allows you not to have to do this, which is kind of tap shooting, to avoid the recoil, and you can still keep the high fire rate while still being accurate. And yeah, like I said, the cheaters, what they have is they also they use the same program to program the controller to auto correct for them, so in essence to give them the analog inputs that they're not actually doing. So it's like the analog is moving without them actually pressing it down. Yeah, so that's how it works. But with this knowledge, you can with skill do the same. So you see now, for example, with this weapon, you see it goes up. There's a lot of upward recoil, but it also goes left and right. So instead of just holding down to adjust, I'm actually going to hold down and a bit to the right, as well as down and a bit to the left. And this is all while I'm shooting. So let's just say I'm shooting, I'm gonna keep doing this, essentially going to the left, going down to the right and then to the left, following the recoil. And you see, you really gotta practice, because you can overreach. Yeah, especially depending on the range. Those small movements make all the difference. Because if you overreach, you're actually making the recoil worse than actually adjusting it. So something like that. You see how accurate that is? This is where I'm actually adjusting. But yeah, so figure out the recoils. If you try this out with the HS, you'll see that it's really hard, because the HS has a lot of left and right as well as up recoil. So it's kind of all over the place, and you have to also adjust all over the place, which is hard to do, but if you practice, you can master it. And but yeah, guys, this is the how you play like the cheaters without actually cheating, with skill. And I recommend you try these settings out. The alternative 3 and the legacy. The legacy is really the biggest difference, and I already explained to you deeper what each of these do. So yeah, because you want to have the fast, as far as sensitivity goes, you want to use something you can fully control. So accuracy is essential, is the first point. Accuracy is more important than speed, but you also want to be, while still being accurate, as fast as you possibly can. You know, you want to be accurate as well as being as fast as you possibly can. But so yeah, guys, that's the video. Thanks for watching, and I hope you learned something.